to Morgan McKinley's first Success Series event, a radical approach to time management webinar, Get More Done and Have More Time, hosted by founder of LifeCoach.com, international best-selling author, speaker and coach, Talane Miedaner. We hope you enjoy the webinar and would like to invite you to tweet any questions or comments. Please follow us at Morgan McKinley and use hashtag CareerAlly and hashtag Success Series to join in the conversation.
We're going to talk a little bit about why people use coach and what coaching is and how you might benefit from that. So we'll briefly talk about that. We're going to talk about the nature of time and understanding how that works makes it much more effective to understand time management as a concept. I'm going to give you some very specific action steps or things, practical, simple steps that you can take to create the experience of having more time in your life and in your work, and very practical steps and tips to help you be more productive and efficient and get the important things done in your life. So if you're here for that, you're in the right place. So stick around. We're going to go. And my style with coaching is I'm very practical. And of course today we're going to talk about some unusual approaches to time management, and hopefully this will open your eyes to different ways of looking at time that will help you be more effective in your own life and enjoy your life more, because that's what it's all about. I'll share with you some tools and resources that you can use for further information, and of course at the back we have our contact information, so feel free to contact us. All right, so that's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to jump right into why you use a coach. Usually people hire a coach when there's a gap between where they are now and where they'd like to be, either personally or professionally. The bigger the gap, the more benefit from having a coach, obviously, because your coach can help you, close that gap and do that in much faster time, and usually a lot more fun than you would do on your own. Most of the time people hire a coach to be successful in their careers. Sometimes they're changing careers. Maybe people want to start their own business. Some people want to move up the corporate ladder and are gunning for their boss's job and want to be more successful. I've worked with a lot of women who want to break through the glass ceiling and get to the upper echelons of senior management. So we've got people in transition, starting new jobs, businesses, retiring, just out of school. Lots of people benefit from coaching. It really is designed to help you reach your full potential. So that if you feel you have not tapped into your full potential, you're right. You haven't. I'll just tell you that right off the bat. So if you do feel that way, I can guarantee you there's more that's possible for you. And coaching can help you unlock that. And that's why people use coaches. And if you've used a personal trainer at the gym, I had a fitness coach who really inspired you. You know that when you go to the gym on your own, yeah, you can do a nice workout and work on your muscles. But when you have a trainer there, somebody who's egging you on, motivating you, and also an objective observer who can see, hey, wait a minute, you're moving your arm too far back. You're going to pull a muscle there. Come back forward and get your posture correct. You'll actually get a much more effective workout and better results. So it's very similar with coaching as well. When we talk about what coaching is, it's not consulting. You hire consultants because they have a particular information base behind them, a particular body of knowledge or expertise or experience in a field, and you want to leverage that knowledge and that experience. A coach may or may not have knowledge or experience of your field. I've coached musicians. I've coached a rock star, and I've never actually been I used to play the flute in the high school band, but I certainly don't think that qualifies me to be a consultant in the area of musical ability. Then I've certainly never been a rock star. So, you can coach people in any area of life regardless of whether you've had that experience or not. And that's the great thing about coaching. It's sort of a one-size-fits-all method regardless of your field, profession, goals, or objectives. Not therapy. Now, that's the other thing I wanted to clarify. Therapy traditionally has dealt with unresolved issues from the past, people who might have had a trauma or an accident or something horrible that's happened in their past or difficult to deal with, a loss. We don't do the grief counseling. That's for your counselors, your therapists, your psychotherapists, your psychiatrists. And coaches, some therapists have been moving into coaching and offering that as well. Totally different field, totally different training, completely different discipline. So if you need therapy, really coaching is not the right thing for you. And the way I like to explain it, I think that's the clearest for people, is that if you think of an Olympic athlete, you'd never go to the Olympics without a coach. There's not a single Olympic athlete who doesn't have at least one, if not a couple of coaches to help them, because in that game, a microsecond makes a difference between getting the gold or silver medal. So it really is critical that you're leveraging your full potential in the Olympics. Now, that's pretty intense. If you are an Olympic skier, for example, and fall down and break your leg, you're going to go to the doctor, get a cast, and then go into physical therapy to restore you to normal functioning order. Once you're at normal functioning order, then you go back to your coach, your sports coach, your skiing coach, who then gets you to excellence. And that's pretty much where the realm of life coaching, business coaching, and executive coaching occurs. We move you from being functioning and well to excellence and really tapping into your full potential. So that's why it's most similar to sports coaching. It's encouraging, it's supportive, it's inspiring, it's a positive relationship. We don't really deal with much from the past. Okay, so that's it on coaching. If you haven't tried it, I know 33% of you have. If you haven't tried it, you might just want to. All right, let's talk about time. First thing to understand about time, before we can even talk about managing it, is what exactly is time? And normally, the way we think of time is actually a construct. We invented the notion of time and said, okay, we've decided that there's 365 days in a year, and each one of those days has 24 hours in it. Each one of those hours contains 60 minutes. So basically, we've imposed a structure on time. So that's actually a man-made thing. We created that. We created clocks. We created this. And it makes a lot of sense because all of you showed up here on time because we've agreed, regardless of whether you're calling in from Asia or the U.S. or throughout Europe, we've agreed that this is the time to dial in. And everybody's in different time zones. We've agreed that how to coordinate, and that makes it possible to function and work in a sensible way. But all of that was made up, and sometimes we forget that. We made that up. The world didn't start out that way. So if you get back to how time originally was, and before clocks and all that were invented, our time is actually something that's quite fluid. And if you think of time, our experience of time is that it shrinks or expands depending on what you are doing, and actually depending on where you are in your life. So those who are close to the end of their life, if you talk to somebody who's really old and ask them, does the day seem really long? Because it seems to them like they're not doing a whole lot, are they? Hanging about, doing a few little things. They don't seem particularly busy. But if you ask them if time is moving slower for them or faster, they'll tell you it's moving like lightning speed. Because the closer you come to the end of your life, the faster time seems to go because you've got your whole life behind you. So your experience of time is that it's moving really quickly. And of course, depending on what you're doing, when I moved to New York City, I used to live in New York City when I used to be a banker working at Chase Manhattan in New York before I became a coach. And when my cousin moved from Wisconsin, she's from Minnesota, she moved in, and I said, something about New York you need to know. Time moves faster in New York City than it does in Minnesota. She didn't believe me. I said, well, let me just explain. I've been here now 10 years, and it feels like it's been about 3 years. But it moves a whole lot faster because it's just a busy, busy city. So anybody who's living in a big city, in a busy place, time moves faster there. It feels like it moves faster. And so, technically 10 years is 10 years, but it felt like 3 years because it just whizzed right by. And so she later agreed. She said, oh, now I know what you mean about the time thing. She said, I never thought I'd live in New York for more than 2 years, and I've been here 15. So, and so the other thing is, in our more minute experiences of time, if you think about it shrinking and expanding, let's just imagine you were sitting on a hot stove, and you had to sit on that stove for 1 minute. That would feel like an eternity. It's like, when do I get off this stove? Now, let's say you're on a hot date with somebody really interesting and sexy, and you have a 3-hour conversation over dinner that just flows by. It feels like minutes. So I know you've all had different experiences like that. You say, whoa, what happened to those 3 hours? That just went by in a flash. So in that time, your experience of time was that it just whizzed by. And when you're actually engaged in what I call a high flow activity, one that really engages you, like say you're a mountain climber, or it could just be going out to dinner with friends, and you're totally engaged, and hours can go by, and it just feels like a minute. There's no sense of time. Time, in a sense, feels like it collapsed altogether, and you don't experience the passing of time. If you're waiting for something to happen, stuck in traffic, Time seems to slow right down. So when we look at the nature of time, and before we can even begin to manage our lives and our time, we need to understand how are we addressing time. Are we addressing time as a fixed commodity that we've got 24 hours in a day just like everybody else? Or are we going to work with time as something fluid that shrinks and expands? Because that's actually our true experience of time. When you're a little kid and got your whole life ahead of you, those days can drag by. You say, oh, Mom, I'm bored. But when you get older again. So again, depending where you are in your life, depending what city you're living in and how fast a pace of life you have, can depend on how your experience of time is. So what I'm going to give you today, now that we've talked about that, is some techniques on how to create the experience of more time in your own life. And I'm going to share with you tips that work with time as a fixed commodity, because that's our reality, isn't it? I'm also going to give you some tips that work with time as a fluid commodity, because that's also true in how we experience time. And so armed with those two approaches to time, you'll have a little bit more leverage in your life, and the experience of more time is easier to create than you may realize. All right. Let's move right on through. Starting with time is fixed. I'm going to share with you a very unusual approach to managing time as a fixed commodity. So the first thing is that there's a problem with the notion of time management, and actually we can't manage time. We all have those 24 hours, right? And we can't change that. So now again, remember, I'm just talking about time as fixed. Forget what I've said about it being fluid, because when it's fluid, that's a different conversation. So if time is fixed, and we're going to agree to that conversation, you can't actually manage it. You've got 24 hours just like everybody else, right? You can't add 26 hours to your personal day. You've got 24, just like everybody else. So sorry, there's nothing really you can do about managing time. However, what you can do is take a look at your activities and what you're doing with those 24 hours and how to actually be more productive and efficient with the same 24 hours that everybody else has. Okay, so now again, this is time is fixed. Now, if I asked you right now, I said, okay, I want you to make a list. You can start if you want to. I would like you to make a list of all the things you need to do in your home. You know, you've got your personal life. So you get up, you have to take a shower in the morning, you have to eat your breakfast, you have to get dressed, you maybe answer some emails, you send your kids off to school, all these little tasks that you do every day. So you start to list all the things that go on in your personal life. And then I'd like you to make a list of all the things that you have to do in terms of time in your business life, and all the work commitments you have, and all the obligations, and all the goals and projects, and everything you've committed to there. So you start adding in all the projects that you have at home. You're going to renovate the kitchen, or redo the bathroom, or make new curtains for the bedroom, all the projects that you have in your work life that you've committed to, all the promises you've made, everything you've agreed to do. I'll bet you've got a pretty darn big list. And that's actually one of our techniques, is make the master list. Write it all down. Write down everything that occurs to you that you have to do. It's a good brain dump. And when you do that, what you will discover with your list and list of things, even things like reading in your mind, you have this notion you're going to read War and Peace someday. Put that on your list. Get everything that occurs to you. I need to do this. I should do this. Put it all on this mega master list. Everything that occurs to you that you need to do. I need to clean out the filing cabinets. I need to get the car fixed. I need to, all those things. I need to write this report for my boss. I need to get that all done. You don't have to do that now. It's going to take a while. But if you start looking at all the things that you have to do, both business-wise and personally, pretty soon you're going to realize that you can't get it all done today, right? All you can do today is one day's work. That's it. You can't do that whole list. You can do one day's work. So this is a real freeing thing for most people when they realize, actually, you can't do it all. You can't get everything done, certainly not today. Maybe over time you can, but not today. Today you can get one day's work done. Now, for some people, that might be 3 hours of work because you're working at home and have kids and have to pick them up. Or for some people, that might be 6 hours. Some people, 7 hours, 8 hours. So you might decide, if time is fixed, how many hours. You take a lunch hour, so then you've got 7 hours work. Then you work an hour late, you've got 8. Figure out what your day's work consists of. Do you have 8 hours to work? Great. Well, then put down 8 hours. But what does one day's work? What can you actually do? How much time do you actually have? And then you need to decide what actually is going to get done, given that you have your 6 hours or your 7 hours to work. All right, so that's the first thing, is starting to say, okay, I can't get everything done. I'm going to do one day's work today. Now, here's another concept. There's two ideas that you need to understand. One's closed list versus an open list. So I'm just going to explain. If you make a list of 10 things to do, that's a closed list. There's 10 items on that list, and if you finish those 10 things, you've completed the list. An open list is like your email. If you have an inbox in your email, it's an open list because throughout the day, more stuff keeps piling into your inbox, right? So it's an open list. If you have an inbox in your paper for your paper incoming mail, and mail comes in throughout the day, that's an open list. Stuff keeps getting added onto it. So an open list is infinite. There's no end to it. Things constantly get added to it. Now, a closed list is finite. There's an end to it. Maybe there's 50 things on that closed list, but those are 50 things. And when you get those 50 things done, that's it. The list is done. So it's actually really empowering to work off a closed list because you can finish it. And there's a lot to be said for the satisfaction of saying, I finished this. I got my list done. I got what I agreed to do, my one day's work done. That is very satisfying. Yet, when you're working off an open list, which is what most people do because they take incoming emails throughout the day, you never get done. And at the end of the day, even though you've worked hard all day long, how many of you actually feel satisfied? Like, I finished something. People don't. Nobody ever gets any satisfaction anymore because we're all working off open lists. And that's just very demoralizing and over time discouraging because you never feel like I did it all, I've got complete. And that wonderful sense of I completed something just doesn't occur anymore to people because we have all these open lists around us that we're working off of. Bad strategy. Much more effective to work off a closed list. Okay, so now you're going to say, well, how the heck am I going to do that? All right, so we'll talk about that. And this is another distinction. So now that you realize working off an open list, you'll never finish. You'll never find satisfaction doing that. Okay? So just beware of doing that. It's just a bad plan. If you're going to do it, know that there's no satisfaction in it. The will-do list versus the to-do list. A will-do list is what you promise or agree to do versus a to-do list. So I talked about when you make your massive to-do list, War and Peace is on there, traveling to France, learning to speak Italian. Those could be on your to-do list or someday maybe list. A will-do list is this is what I will do today. And so identifying your will-do list is what you promise to do today. And that's really important. I'm just going to actually flip to the next slide because that is a sample will-do list. So if you're saying, okay, I've got my 6 hours of work or 8 hours of work today, and it's going to be different for some people only have 2 hours. You decide, what can I do in this one day's work that I'm allotted today? And you make your will-do list. This is what I am planning to do today. And allot the amount of time so you can see if it's actually going to fit in to your schedule. Now, current initiative, I've got that on there, and I'm just going to explain briefly what that is. I always like, when I'm coaching people, it's called your big goal. Your current initiative, it's your big goal, it's your major project. It's the thing that will make the biggest difference to your life and your career. Now, for some people, that might be a personal thing. Like I know people who want to write a book, and their current initiative, one of my colleagues would get up at 4 a.m. in the morning every day, and his current initiative was to write a book, and he was writing a coaching book. And he had 2 small children, and he had a coaching business. And so his current initiative, in order to have time to work on that, he knew he had to do it before the kids were up. They were little. And so he'd get up at 4 a.m. Now, he did go to bed quite early. He worked every day, at least 2 or 3 hours on his book. And then when the kids would get up, he'd be at breakfast with them, and then he'd do his coaching work during the day and speak to clients. And then at the end of the day, he did, after dinner, go to bed fairly soon. But he managed to write his book within a year doing that and spending that 1 to 3 hours a day. That was his current initiative. Your current initiative might be for your current job. Maybe there's a really important project, something you're working on that would help your career or it's important to the company, and that's your current initiative. So at least give 1 hour to your current initiative, your big goal, every day. Now, for some of you, that might mean getting up at 6 a.m. to write your own novel. That might be your personal current initiative. And then at work, you might have another current initiative. But that's your big goal, the one that's going to make the difference in your life. So I'm just explaining that. Now I just put down, these are random things, like maybe you know you're going to spend an hour every day on email, so you allot some time for that. Hello? Good strategy. You're going to spend 10 minutes cleaning out your paper inbox, answering your voicemails. I've just made these up, but you obviously would make your own will-do list and agree what hours you're going to do on that work. Now, you'll notice there's a line at the bottom, and it says, call Bob Smith about XYZ project. During the day, we have our commitments. We say, oh, I'm going to do all this. And what happens? We get interrupted, don't we? And so we can't do our will-do list. We certainly don't have a full 8 hours a day to do that because there's all these interruptions. So let's talk about interruptions. There's 3 different kinds of interruptions that happen. Number 1 are emergencies. Emergencies are the house is on fire, the building's on fire, out. Stop what you're doing immediately and get out. That's a real emergency. So other than a fire or something like that, you shouldn't be having too many emergencies. So take a look and see, is it really, somebody's hurt themselves, that's an emergency. So take a look. Those are really emergencies. Let's not call other things emergencies if they're not true emergencies. So that can be an interruption. And the other sort of interruptions that we get during the day are things that need to be handled today. So it wasn't necessarily on your will-do list, but something's cropped up and it has to be handled today. Absolutely has to be done today. So that's what we call a same-day interruption. And then there's everything else. So that's the third kind of interruptions. Things that are interrupting you but don't necessarily need to be handled today. And those are the 3 things. Now, going back to our will-do list, if you go to the bottom black line there, you see call Bob Smith. So maybe you got a voicemail message and you need to return Bob Smith's call today. It asks, can't wait till tomorrow, it's got to be done today. So you put it below the line. And any other interruptions that come in that you hadn't planned on your will-do list get below the line. And it's really useful to track so you can start to see how many true interruptions you have that have to be handled today, not tomorrow. Because if otherwise we want to do everything else will get moved to tomorrow. And so you can even, and you might have just a piece of paper that you have this list on, you can add an extra sidebar to it and have that called tomorrow, and then put things that don't have to be done today but still need to get done, and put those in your tomorrow list. And that will start to form your will-do list for tomorrow. Very interesting little strategy, and this was not invented by me. This was invented by a guy named Mark Forster, who's written a book called Do It Tomorrow. And his whole concept is he treats time as something that's fixed. And in this approach, it actually makes the most sense to do everything tomorrow. And the reason that is because it's called batching. And when we batch our tasks or activities, we're working off that closed list. So going back to our closed list versus the open list, if you work off your email list as it's coming in, you're working off an open list. Not very satisfying. But if you take all those emails, pull out the ones that have to get handled today, and then put them on the bottom of your black line, so you know, okay, those need to get done, or you plan to put them into your email 1 hour, that's fine. And then everything else gets batched for tomorrow. And it sounds terribly inefficient, like you're procrastinating, but actually, when we are responding to things after they've cooled off for a day, they don't have the same heat. They don't have that immediacy. And when we respond to an email that comes in, and if anybody has those little alerts that beep, or little you've got mail sort of thing, get rid of those. Because what that does is interrupts you while you're working on your bigger goals, your current initiative, and all those things. And what happens is, and this is what's happened to just about everybody in the corporate world, we're using our reptilian brain. It's at the back of your neck, and it's a part of your brain that's designed to react instantaneously and quickly to avert danger. It's your emergency response brain. And it reacts quickly, but it's not the cognitive brain. The cognitive brain is actually behind your forehead. It's at the front of your head. That's your thoughtful brain. That's the brain that thinks things over, mulls things over. Let me have some time to think about it. Our reactive brain is very primitive. It's really designed that when a lion is about to eat you up and jump on you, you dash out of the way, or you kill the lion, or you run or do something quite reactive. So when we're responding to emails or phone messages throughout the day, we're actually in our reactive mode. We're using that instinctive brain, which is the oldest and most primitive, not the best part of your brain to be using. Okay, so we want to remove you from doing that, and to do that, we basically postpone everything for a day. Now, this is why it's a radical approach to time management, because you guys are probably thinking, there's no way I could do that. Yeah, you might be able to do this. This has transformed a lot of corporate executives' lives because actually postponing things one day allows you then to work off a closed list because you can say, all right, these 50 emails that came in today can be done tomorrow. So I'm going to put them in my inbox thing that's labeled tomorrow, and tomorrow I'll do those. And they're a finite list because I can see there's 50 emails to do. I know that's going to take me 2 hours, so then I can budget that into my will-do list and actually look at that and have that work. Does that make sense there? So you see, you're working off a closed list, which is satisfying because you can actually get to the end of it. And yes, I know you may have to go in the morning, check, make sure there's nothing on fire, anything that's truly has to be handled same day. Then those go below your black line and have same day. And you start to see why you're struggling to get your work done. It's because maybe you have tons of interruptions throughout the day. I've had people who start actually using their voicemail more because they're focusing on their work, using the receptionist who handles those interruptions for them, lets things go so that they aren't interrupted so much. Every time you're interrupted, you're flashing back into your reptilian brain. You're not using your good brain. So to get better work done, you should be using your cognitive brain, which means you mustn't allow yourself to be interrupted all the time, unless that's your job. A receptionist's job is to handle interruptions. She's the one who, or he is the one who fields all those incoming calls so that you can actually think. That's the idea anyway. But what's happened with email is now everybody's handling interruptions all the time throughout the day. Lousy, lousy strategy for efficiency. So you'll get a whole lot more done if you just say, okay, those don't need to be done today, those are going in tomorrow. Check your email only once or twice a day. Don't allow it to interrupt you, and you'll be much, much, much more productive. And you'll start to see, I mean, some people who work, firefighters, for example, work in emergency response. They're supposed to hang around all day and wait for emergencies. That's their job. But most of us are not. We're handling interruptions at the same time we're trying to get projects or work done, and finding that quite difficult because we're not using the correct brain. We're constantly using our reptilian brain, which is not that bright, and not using our cognitive brain. All right? So this is a very simple strategy, and by batching up your emails, batching up your mail that comes in, and then doing it tomorrow, working off a closed list, you can actually end up finishing stuff for a change. And boy, does that ever feel good. And when you get your will-do list done during a day, that feels satisfying. It's really gratifying to actually complete what you agreed to complete in a day's work. Right? So stop working off those darn open lists and start closing your list and agreeing this is what I'm going to do. It takes a little while. Give yourself a week to get used to this strategy because it takes a little bit of shifting gears. We're so used to working off open lists that we're not quite used to it. And it'll take a little bit of discipline to get used to. But you'll find you'll be 10 times more productive if you do it this way. So give it a shot. All right, now, I promised you we'd tackle time on both things. Any questions, before we move on actually on that, any questions about this? Because I suspect there might be some.
Yes, today we actually had a lovely message from Samantha who's just said, with a very demanding job in an industry that is going through a lot of change, it seems harder than ever to establish or maintain any form of work-life balance. Very interested to learn today tools and ways of managing this much more successfully than I feel like I'm doing right now. So I think maybe you've actually touched on those tips already before.
Yeah, I think if you try this will-do list and start batching things and doing them tomorrow, and we know that works. If you've ever been, people who might be panicking say, oh, can I really do it tomorrow? Yes, because then you'll say, okay, I've got these 50 emails. I can budget the time for them. I can think about them, and I can answer them properly and well. And, you're giving them your cognitive brain. When you respond to them same day, you're using your reptilian brain. So you'll find you actually are doing better work by postponing things a day at least. Now, if you've ever been on, this works because how many of you have ever taken a week or two holiday and you come home and you find stacks of mail waiting for you when you get back? A whole week or 2 weeks, or I've even gone a month and had a whole month of mail waiting for me. Well, it's a big stack, right? When you have that one stack, that's a batch, and it's a closed list, because even if it's a foot high, well, that's a finite list. Nothing's being added to it. You take that stack, and you can work through it probably in less than an hour, and sort the whole thing out. And you're very efficient at it because it's old. It's not fresh. You don't give it unnecessary attention. When things are fresh, we tend to give them unmerited attention that they actually don't deserve. When they're stale, we can actually start to see, actually, that's not very important. I can just throw that in the bin. So when we've had this cooling off period, we actually make better choices, better decisions, and we prioritize better. When we respond immediately, everything seems like an emergency. So you'll find you're actually able to prioritize your stuff much more effectively if you batch it and if you let it cool off even just one day. I've gotten some people who own their own businesses to only do their emails once a week, and they have assistants handle anything, but if there's they find that they're much more effective that way. So if you can answer your emails once or twice, check them in the morning, check them at night, or in the evening before you leave, an hour before you go, that's enough. Don't do it throughout the day. So that will help you, because when people get overwhelmed and have too much going on and too much happening at once, it just ends up being chaos. And you lose control. It's not very effective. And you're not sticking to your plan. So that's the will-do list. Right, so that should help you. Any other questions before we move on to the fluid side of things?
Yes, so we actually got another question from Emma, actually. She's asked, in our company there is an expectation of responses to email, etc., in the same day or ASAP. How can I combat this?
Well, I've had some clients do this by putting a, same day, I can understand, by putting a note at the bottom of their, signature that says, I respond to my emails at 11 a.m. and at 3 p.m. or whatever it is, or 4 p.m., whatever works for you, or maybe 10 a.m. or whatever. I look at my emails during these times. If there is a true emergency, phone me at this number. So if there is something that you absolutely need immediate response to, then give them a different way to get that. They can phone you or something, or come into my office and see me, because I won't be checking between that time. You may need to talk this over with your boss. So that's the other thing. Now, if you're the receptionist and are supposed to be responding to emails throughout the day, well, that's fine. That's your job. But actually, if you want to get some work done, it's not a good idea to respond to emails instantly. So I'm still saying you can respond to them same day, but it might be that you say, oh, thanks so much for your email. I'll get to work on that tomorrow. So that might be the thing that you do. If you can. But again, I remember on the will-do list, I've got that 1 hour of email time in, because I recognize that there may be some things. And maybe you need to say, gosh, I need to spend 3 hours a day responding to emails. That's the nature of my job. Everybody's job is different. Some people might need to spend 8 hours a day responding to emails because that's their job. So take a look and see. This will-do list will vary depending on the nature of your work. But most people are responding to emails throughout the day unnecessarily, and it creates more work that's unnecessary and unproductive. So try cutting back and just checking twice a day. And then if it does need to go same-day response, remember, below the black line, or budget more time. If you say, actually, I've started to budget my time, I do need to respond to all my emails. I need 2.5 hours. Well, then and you can tell your boss that, this is how much time I've clocked it. I need to do emails throughout the day. And that's another thing. Instead of doing them throughout the day, you now can batch them and do them in one shot. And I actually recommend doing them in the afternoon, if you can, because that's when usually most people aren't terribly bright and creative at about 3 in the afternoon. And so that's a good time to do emails. Save your current initiatives for when you're freshest. Now, if you're freshest at 3, then save that for your big project. But don't give your freshest hour of the day when your brain's fresh and alert. Don't give that to darn emails. Give that to your current initiative, to your big projects. All right. I'm going to go on to time is fluid bit, because we're going to run out of time for this webinar. Now, this is the totally different approach. I've given you one very radical approach to time management, and you might just need to experiment with it before you take it on board. And I'll just say that in terms of corporate executives, this can be transformational, absolutely transformational. You'll do better quality work. You actually feel a sense of, hey, I actually got what I said I was going to get done today done. And that's a really good feeling, that sense of accomplishment. Time is fluid. Now, this is the other way of tackling our time, and this is when time shrinks and expands depending on what we're doing. So if time is fluid, what I can do is help you very easily create the feeling, the experience of having loads of time. And you're not going to like the answer to this. I have a little story to tell. I was leading a seminar in Kansas City once, and a couple people invited me out to dinner, and this guy talked about how he had been traveling, and he went to this island in Hawaii, And it was just absolutely beautiful, and fruit were growing off the trees. He ended up hanging out with some people that they met, and they were just fishing from the sea and picking fruit, and they just lived this, he was just, for, ages, he was just living on the beach, and he had lost his passport, and wasn't too fussed about it, obviously. He's a musician. He was a very laid-back fellow. And he was just hanging out with these people, having a great old time. And he felt like after about a year, he thought, you know what, I think I better check in and find the U.S. Embassy and tell them I lost my passport and go, figure out what, get myself back into the real world here. And so he went and searched for the embassy, and he told them, he'd been gone for a year or so, and he thought he should find him. And it actually turned out he'd only been gone for about a month and a half. It felt like a year because he wasn't doing very much. He was at a very slow pace to life. So the trick to experiencing, having the sense of having more time, is actually to do less. Like go get lost on a desert island somewhere. Suddenly time slows down and you feel like, oh, wow, this has really been great. I've had a whole year here. It was only about a month. So, really fun story because we're talking about the nature of time. And he said, yeah, it's exactly that way. So now I'm going to give you more practical tips than going off to a desert island and losing your passport. Sacred evening. A sacred evening is one night a week that you don't have anything scheduled. That's it. I know you're all working. So you get home from work and you don't have scheduled stuff to do. It's completely unscheduled. You can do what you feel like you want to do. Now if you have children, all the more important. Your spouse can take care of the kids that evening, and maybe you want to go off and listen to a concert, or maybe you want to go for a walk on the beach or the woods, or maybe you just want to sit in the bathtub with a glass of wine. You don't have anything planned. You can do what you feel like doing. Maybe that's to go out with friends and go see a movie. That's great. But it's an unplanned chunk of time. Give yourself about 3 hours to do something just for yourself, and that's your sacred evening. And especially if you have children, you need this time for yourself because you don't have much time for yourself when you have children. I've got 2 of my own. Day of rest. And this is something that's also gotten lost. It used to be, it was sort of in the Bible, the Sabbath was a sacred day, the Saturday. Sunday is a sacred day. It used to be that we weren't supposed to do any work on those days. And yet now people are bringing work home, working on weekends, or they just have a super hectic social life, so they try to jam in all sorts of activities, and they never even feel rested because although they're doing fun things, they're actually doing too much on weekends to actually get that time, the experience of time slowing down. So a true day of rest, reclaiming your day of rest once a week at least, is required. And if it's a Monday for you and that's your day off, great. Make that be your day of rest. Don't jam that up with too many activities. Again, create that desert island feeling of having more time by just saying, nope, this is my day of rest. We aren't doing anything. And try doing nothing a little bit more often. This does create a tremendous feeling of having more time. So watch out for overscheduling your weekends there. Now this is my favorite tip of all. Show up 10 minutes early. This is the best, actually. If you want to do one thing this week to give yourself the experience of more time, show up 10 minutes early to every single appointment that you have. If you're going to a meeting, get there 10 minutes early. If you're going to the dentist, get there at least 10 minutes early. You get everywhere early instead of showing just on time. I used to think that it was more efficient to show up just on time. I didn't want to be late because I thought that was rude. So I didn't run late, but I used to show up just on time. And when I started showing up 10 minutes early, that was coach's orders, my own coach, I realized actually it was stressful to show up just on time. It's a bit stressful. You aren't giving yourself any leeway. So if there's anything wrong, you need to stop and get gas, you forgot to get gas or petrol for your car, you haven't factored in that extra 10 minutes to do that. So whatever you're doing, if you start building in this 10 minutes early to every appointment, business and personal, you'll start building in these little pockets of doing nothing. And this is really good because then it gives you a chance to sit and do nothing for 10 minutes or so throughout the day, or at least once a day do that. And this, again, you're slowing down time. You start to build in the experience of time. I'll just tell you a real quick story about one of my clients who he was a running late sort of guy. Very nice fellow, was actually in the recruiting business in New York City. And he was always, trying to think, oh, I'll do that one last phone call and then I'll leave to this appointment. He's always jamming in as much as he possibly could, thinking that was being efficient. And I said, no, show up 10 minutes early and see what happens. Just do it for a week. Try it on as an exercise. You don't have to do it if you don't like it after a week. So during that week, he committed to that. He ended up showing up, got 10 minutes early to a client. He was a prospective client he was meeting. Hadn't met the guy before. The fellow wasn't even there. So the secretary said, why don't you wait in his office? So he got into the guy's office and was all alone there and had time to actually observe that there was photographs on the wall of this guy playing golf and tennis, and there was all sorts of little golf memorabilia and stuff in the office, and he thought, oh, interesting, this guy likes to play tennis and golf. Well, he was a tennis player too. So when the guy who's meeting him actually showed up, he was actually a few minutes late. So now who has the advantage already? Obviously my client has the advantage because he's relaxed, he's at peace, he's not late, he's been there early. So he immediately put the prospect to ease and said, oh, I see you play tennis. And they started talking about tennis, and it just broke the ice. Not only did he seal the deal and get the deal with this guy, but he also ended up sealing a tennis date as well, and they ended up building a fantastic relationship over time. And he said if he had not shown up early and had shown up late, he would have been a little bit stressed. He wouldn't have had time to notice the stuff about the tennis and golf. He might have noticed it at some point, but he wouldn't have noticed it right away. And he's not convinced he would have gotten the deal at all. So he immediately showing up this 10 minutes, so he was sold. You know, one success, and he's like, this is a good strategy. But more importantly than that, it gives you this, when people are just showing up on time or late, they're running around a little bit like a chicken without a head. And it's a little bit stressful, keeps you a little bit on edge, just a bit stressy. So if you can stop doing that, when you show up 10 minutes early, you're going to be peaceful, you'll be present, you'll be aware, you'll be calm. That's a really good place to start anything. It's just a great place to be in life. And it gives you this, again, time is fluid. It will give you the experience all of a sudden that you have lots of time. It's a strange thing. Try it. And you'll start to see, oh, wow, you'll start having those bits of peace. And especially when things are going chaotic all around you, all the more important to do this. The top paid consultants in New York have little rooms that they call think tanks. And what they are beds, little cots in a room, and people go in there to take a little nap. Because if you ever notice, if you're showering or taking a quick little nap, you come up with your best ideas. I had one client, there's no such thing as his office, they didn't have beds. This was a consulting firm, so they were paid to come up with really good ideas, and they realized, well, when do you come up with your best ideas? Well, it's the moment you lie down and take a nap, isn't it? So they had these think tank rooms throughout the building. Fascinating. But we don't allow ourselves to do that. Instead, we pay consultants to think for us when we could actually do it ourselves if we gave ourselves 10 minutes to think. So one client I had, the only place he could go, he would sit in the office supply closet in the dark for 10 minutes. And that was where he stole his 10 minutes. He said, well, I can do that. Other people go outside and smoke a cigarette or something, so why can't I sit in the supply closet for 10 minutes and meditate? So he took his 10 minutes doing his little break there. And again, of course, time is fluid. Check your emails once or twice a day. You're going to switch to the cognitive brain. So there's just a few little tips there to help you out with the fluid nature of time. And as you'll notice, they'll have you doing less, but that will push you right back into the cognitive brain, your thoughtful brain, when you give yourself time to think, and you'll have better ideas and better responses to the work that you're doing. That's well worth doing. Now, here's another little tip here, and this is I think this helps out on both fronts. And when you realize that you can't get everything done in a day, then you've got to think, okay, well, what do I put on my will-do list? How do I figure out what goes on the will-do list? So that's the key question. What goes on that will-do list? And these 3 questions will help you figure that out. They're very simple. Number 1 is, what is important about today? And I'd like you to think about your whole day. Maybe it's your son's 3rd birthday, and you need to get home early so that you can blow out some candles with that guy. Maybe that's what's really important about today. So think about everything. What must get done? It could be what's important about today is you have an important presentation to give or a sales meeting to attend or a client to speak to. So think about what is important about today. Write those things down. So write those things down, and then think about what must get done today. What absolutely must get done today? And this is absolutely must. Not something that could be done tomorrow, because if it can be done tomorrow, let's do it tomorrow. You're better off doing it tomorrow. Take the heat off today, do it tomorrow. Instead, focus on what's important about today. So truly, what must get done today? And then the 3rd question is, what's important about the future? So what's coming down the pike? Now, that might be the near future, that in 2 weeks, you've got this important sales pitch to make, or this important project that you need to complete or start working on. So it might be something in the near future, the next month or so, something's coming up. Or it could be your future, your big future. What may be important about your future is that you want to start your own business, or you want to become financially independent, or you want to write a novel. And that's what's important about your future. So you want to make that your current initiative and spend some time every day on that current initiative. So these 3 questions, if you only focus on what's going on today, you might forget to kind of think ahead, oh, what's coming up ahead that I actually need to do today to prepare for that. Because if you're only looking at today, you might miss the bigger future or things just coming around the pike, and we don't want to get caught short-handed. So that's these 3 questions. Now, the beauty of these, Stephen Covey has the whole time management quadrant with the 4 quadrants, and said, you could get an urgent but unimportant phone call, for example. It's the wrong number, and yet you picked up the phone. It was the wrong number, and it totally interrupted your train of thought when you were working on something really important, like some big project that's important to you. So it's important to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important and not urgent, so it's coming down the future, so it's not urgent today, and then what's completely unimportant and never needs to be done, which I call your C priority tasks that you never really need to do. That's complicated, thinking about these 4 quadrants and, okay, what is this? How do I prioritize? These 3 questions, simple. And when you answer these 3 questions, that's the important stuff. That's the stuff that should go on your will-do list. Because if you get the important things done, maybe you don't get everything done today, but you get the important things done, then you're actually getting done what matters and what's going to make a difference to your career and to your life. It's very simple. This will keep you on there's an 80-20 rule that 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions. And then the opposite of that means that 80% of what we do barely produces a result. It's a waste of time. So if you can focus on the 20% that actually makes a difference, that's what you should do, right? Because that's the thing that yields the 80% result. Only 20%. Amazing. This is how you figure out what that 20% is. What's the part that's going to make a difference? That's these 3 questions. What's important about today? And that's what goes on your will-do list. It's a very, very simple way to help figure out of all the things that you have to do. I'm going to sail on through to the time is fixed. So just to summarize, remember, if you batch, anything that you can batch is an efficiency thing. Any efficiencies, time is fixed. If you save yourself time, well, then you have extra time to do something else. Doing it tomorrow is how you batch things. Because if you're working off an open list, you haven't got a batch. And it's not very satisfying, furthermore, nor is it efficient because you're using your reptilian brain. So you don't want to do that either. So putting it all off till tomorrow is a way that you can batch everything that comes in. So obviously there'll be some things, if you're an emergency response, there is no batching, you just do it as it comes. But hopefully you're set up to handle emergencies. And if you start to see this, you can start to show your boss, hey look, I spend my whole day just responding to stuff and don't actually have time to do some of these projects that are supposed to be important. So that's an interesting way to look at, you can start to actually examine and see what's going on in your life. Are you really just an emergency response person? Well, then you should, maybe the company needs to hire a receptionist or a secretary. Say no and say it often. Again, if time is fixed, the more you say no to, the more time you have. So be careful what you allow to get onto your plate in the first place. And of course, if you can delegate, the more you can delegate, the more time you'll have because you've gotten rid of stuff that was on your plate, now it's on somebody else's. So I always say go for the low-hanging fruit. Get rid of housework, chores, these are things that are relatively inexpensive to hire out and will free you up. So these are some of the personal things. And if it's business stuff, maybe there's things that you're doing that you shouldn't do, that your receptionist or secretary should be doing. You're not delegating what you should. Or somebody else on your team is more qualified or able to do that, and you should delegate it. And then again, focus on one big goal at a time. People give themselves too many big goals, and then they overwhelm themselves. So ideally, one current initiative, one big goal, that's enough. Do that. Because that's time is fixed. We've got some helpful books and resources here for you. If you're starting out, start with Coach Yourself to Success. If you want to change your career, the new career book would be helpful. And we're doing this giveaway, right? Emma, we've got a few books to give away.
That's right, yes, we've got 6 books to give away and signed by yourself, Talane. So everybody who's joined us today will be in the winning to win one of those books.
Pardon me. So we've got that to look forward to. So some of you might be the big winners of a book. We have a career change coaching kit that can help you. We've got some really amazing computerized assessments that very quickly tell you what your natural abilities are. So if any of you are out there looking to change careers, feel free to contact us for more information at lifecoach.com about that. And then we've got an online coaching program if you're on a tight budget. Obviously, I think one-on-one coaching by phone is the way, is obviously the best product, but for some people that might not be affordable. We do have an online program at $19.95 a month. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We've got everything going on there. And feel free to email directly to Talane@lifecoach.com. That's my direct email if there's anything I can help you with or if you'd like any one-on-one coaching. So I hope that you have found some interesting tips, that this has been a fresh way of looking at your time in your life. And even if you do nothing other than show up 10 minutes early, I think you'll have gotten your value out of this webinar today. Do we have time to take a couple of questions if there's any in the queue?
Yeah, so everybody, I think we've got room for one last question, so please chat us your questions and we'll forward them on to Talane. Just on a note, Talane, thank you so much for your time today. I think everybody's got some great tips from you in terms of time management. And all the attendees today, I'd like to say a big thank you for joining the webinar. And if you want further information about our upcoming events, please visit morganmckinley.co.uk. All right, let's see if we've got some questions coming through.
I do realize it's a completely radical way of approaching time, but try it out and see how it works for you. You might find that it revolutionizes your experience. And you can tackle it from both ends. You can tackle it from the fixed perspective and becoming more efficient by batching and doing things tomorrow. And you can also tackle it from the fluid perspective. So you maybe just try one this week and see what appeals to you. Set aside that sacred evening for a change, or decide you can actually truly have a day of rest over the weekend. And put those simple little things. Show up 10 minutes early. Those are the simple little techniques that will give you a much richer feeling in life and a lot more peace as you go through your chaotic, stressful, busy days.
We've got some questions actually coming in just to know whether the webcast will be, I guess, shown on YouTube. And this webinar actually is going to be on our YouTube channel, Morgan McKinley Recruitment, as of next week. And I'll just look through now just for a final question. I think you went back to the other one about the emails, Talane. What if the sender of the email is using their reptilian brain, that is their boss? How do we respond to that?
Yeah, definitely don't respond to that one. I mean, that's the great thing. You'll say, oh, wow. And this is the funny thing about emails is they always sound harsher. Emails can sound kind of harsh, cruel, mean, evil even. So beware. If you get a harsh-sounding email, what I do is pick up the phone and say, gosh, I just got this email. It sounded a bit, didn't sound like you. I just wanted to run this past you. Is this what you meant? And more often than not, it's just people are using that, firing off that reptilian brain, which is very reactive, snake-like. It's like viciousness to that reptilian brain where we just lash out when we're in that mode, which is, again, another reason not to do your emails today. Do them tomorrow. Batch them up. Do them all tomorrow. Today, focus on your filing or something. Do something different. Work on your big project. But give yourself one day free to just batch it and then keep doing that. You'll find that you're going to have much nicer emails going out, more thoughtful emails, having had some chance to cool off a bit. And if you do get a reptilian sort of responses from people, just recognize, aha, that's because they're checking their emails throughout their day. Ha ha, I know better than that. But don't buy into that. You do not need to respond back with a reptilian brain. Do not fall into that trap. Instead, let it cool off a day. Respond to it tomorrow. And if you do have to, for whatever reason, make an immediate response, I recommend picking up the phone. And more often than not, you'll resolve the issue very peacefully and agreeably because you'll be not angry because you know, oh, I don't need to respond in a snake-like way because I'm not using my reptilian brain. I'm using my nice cognitive brain. So don't fall into that trap. Never send back or whiz back an angry response and reply because then you create email escalation wars, which I'm sure we've all done a few of those in our past and then later regretted them.
I think that's it, Talane. I think
Great.
It's time to finish the webinar. And thanks again, everyone.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure being here, and I feel free to email me at Talane@lifecoach.com if I didn't get to any particular questions that you might have had on this. Of course, dive into any of the resources that you might find helpful on our website at lifecoach.com. There's a whole bunch of free things as well that you can use. And a big thank you to Morgan McKinley for inviting me here today to do this presentation. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Enjoy your newfound time, everybody.